The first major upset of the NFL's 2025 league year went down Tuesday night, unless, that is, your free agency bracket actually had Russell Wilson advancing to a new employer before Aaron Rodgers did. Regardless, that is apparently the case, Wilson agreeing to join the New York Giants, per multiple reports. For one season of work, he's guaranteed to make $10.5 million in 2025, a figure that can double to $21 million if he reaches his incentives. While this outcome isn't necessarily a shock, the timing is a bit surprising, and lends itself to a look at the winners and losers of this somewhat curious transaction, the 2025 options for Mr. Unlimited. Sorry, we can never resist, we're decidedly limited. But he will apparently remain a starting quarterback in the NFL for a 14th consecutive season, at least at the start of it. The Giants still own the number 3 overall pick of the NFL draft, and Wilson's arrival should hardly preclude them from selecting a young passer, but more on that later. And, for whatever it's worth, New York could also be the ideal launching pad for whatever Wilson's post-NFL career entails, whether it's media, business, politics, or some combination thereof. The Giants' embattled head coach and general manager, respectively, both are heading into their 4th season, surely brought in Wilson with the sign-off of team owner John Mara. Wilson's age, 36, and one-year deal are clearly indicative that he's a bridge to somewhere, whether to a rookie drafted next month or next year, if not another veteran down the line. In any case, this move seems to buy the team's brain trust more time in the aftermath of questionable moves in recent years, namely the extension for former QB Daniel Jones and the decision not to re-sign RB Saquon Barkley, who went on to justify Mara's worst fears by leading the arch-rival Philadelphia Eagles to a Super Bowl title. They get the back page win in Gotham for signing the best Steelers quarterback of 2024, Justin Fields, who also got a much stronger contract, 2 years for $40 million with 75% of it guaranteed. The NYJ have also likely created better near and long-term options for themselves with that move than the Giants probably did. While Rodgers isn't in the building yet, back in the building, at least the Steelers no longer have to consider what would be an awkward second date with Wilson, whom coach Mike Tomlin forced into the lineup last season after Fields' strong start only to experience greatly diminished returns. Pittsburgh lost its final 5 games last season, crushed in the wild card round by the Baltimore Ravens, and the organization would doubtless have faced a lot of heat locally and nationally had it wound up running it back with Russ. The entertainment career of Wilson's famous wife will almost certainly thrive to a much greater degree in the Big Apple than her husband's, and she should certainly have superior local opportunities than she would have had in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Nashville, Greenland, et al. The wideout's Pro Bowl rookie season was OBJ-esque in terms of his impact, 109 catches for 1,204 yards and 7 TDs, and dynamism to this offense, despite what he was working with behind center. Wilson is a lot of things, but dummy is not among them. Expect him to feed neighbors, easily the Giants' best weapon and probably their best player, on short, intermediate and moonball throws. And expect the young star's production to benefit 1 year after he was catching passes from Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle. Shedeur Sanders. Despite Wilson's arrival, the University Colorado star should very much remain in play to be taken with that number 3 overall draft pick. Should that become reality, Sanders would not have to immediately take the reins of a bad team. A third-place finish in the NFC East in 2025 would qualify as a surprise, and would instead have the benefit of learning under Wilson, who would likely be a far more intentional mentor than, say, Rodgers. The wideout's Pro Bowl rookie season was OBJ-esque in terms of his impact, 109 catches for 1,204 yards and 7 TDs, and dynamism to this offense, despite what he was working with behind center. Wilson is a lot of things, but dummy is not among them. Expect him to feed neighbors, easily the Giants' best weapon and probably their best player, on short, intermediate and moonball throws. And expect the young star's production to benefit 1 year after he was catching passes from Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle. Shedeur Sanders. Despite Wilson's arrival, the University Colorado star should very much remain in play to be taken with that number 3 overall draft pick. Should that become reality, Sanders would not have to immediately take the reins of a bad team. A third-place finish in the NFC East in 2025 would qualify as a surprise, and would instead have the benefit of learning under Wilson, who would likely be a far more intentional mentor than, say, Rodgers. Still, Wilson gives Big Blue options, Schoen and Dabble seemingly no longer boxed into picking a passer with that first-rounder, and that could mean a short slide or worse for Sanders, whose draft stock seems to have a lot more variance than QB Cam Ward of the University of Miami, Florida, the presumed number 1 pick. Malik Neighbors. While Wilson should be an improvement over New York's 2024 passers, he's also a temp, and that means whatever chemistry Neighbors forms with him will be makeshift before he has to start over with Sanders or someone else in 2026. Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito. Winston, the number 1 pick of the 2015 draft but now something of an NFL journeyman, agreed to a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Giants on Friday, the kind of arrangement that suggested he might have the role Wilson seems to have already wrested away. DeVito will also be back in 2025, but it appears his opportunity to play has been severely curbed after the undrafted free agent started 8 times in his first 2 seasons, the local Jersey kid known as Tommy Cutlets, often producing sufficiently encouraging results to suggest he might have a decent future at least as a pro backup. Now, he and Winston could be QB3 and QB4, respectively. It's kinda seemed like he's been trending toward the Steel City for a minute and preparing himself to give up Broadway and Knicks games after he embraced the big city following 18 years in Green Bay. So maybe the impact on Rodgers here is negligible, but if he ever considered the Giants a backup plan or even a negotiating ploy, well. Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. After reviving Jones in 2022 and producing a surprising 9-7-1 campaign that included a playoff win at Minnesota, the Giants' decision-making tandem is 9-25 over the past 2 seasons while suffering an additional embarrassing defeat while being portrayed in an off-season version of HBO's Hard Knocks. Wilson may or may not punch up this offense, but if the Giants wind up in position to draft Arch Manning in 2026 as the long-awaited successor to Uncle Eli, well, seems highly unlikely Daboll and Schoen would be around to benefit from it. Despite starting just 12 games in 2024, he earned his 10th Pro Bowl nod, after other AFC quarterbacks backed out, while going 6-6, including the postseason ouster. And while Wilson's numbers were generally in line with his career norms last season, on a per-game basis, if you watched the Steelers play at all, it was obvious that he was the beneficiary of some inordinately fluky plays and generally favorable matchups, until the team's season-ending implosion. Also far less mobile than he once was, Wilson was highly ineffective down the stretch, averaging just 171.2 passing yards over his final 5 regular season starts. He seems to have yet another opportunity to rekindle his glory days in Seattle, but Wilson will also be doing it on what is effectively a QB2 salary, which means very little job security as his late career arc continues to seemingly trend decidedly downward.